During this webinar, we're going to look at the Nolan Business Solutions eRequest Purchase to Pay module, and we're going to focus in on how it works with the Dynamics Prepayments. Nolan's eRequest Purchase to Pay module provides a centralized procurement portal for all your purchasing needs. Users log into a website and there they can manage their requisitions all the way through to the purchase order and receiving of goods. By using specific forms within the product, we're able to define and document processes that relate to each of the individual departments of your organization. It provides easier approval and tracking of purchases, thus making it a more efficient process. eRequest works through approved suppliers, which must be on your Dynamics system. So supplier management is controlled in this way, not allowing users to purchase from unapproved suppliers. And because we use the purchase order processing module inside Dynamics, supplier lead time, accuracy and quality tracking is also possible. The product works through allowing users to enter requests through a web front end. They can send those requests through an approval chain of one or many users. And at the same time, we can also do commitment checking to make sure that what they're requesting is within the budgets related to the accounts. Once a request has been finally approved, it becomes a purchase order in Dynamics GP. At that point as well, once the goods are received, those goods can be, the goods receipt notification can be put in through eRequest or Dynamics. That matches up with the purchase order in a three-way matching scenario, or the purchase invoice can match directly to the purchase order in a two-way matching scenario. And if there's a variance in the invoice, or even if you want to over a certain limit, we can put the purchase invoice back around an approval route to be able to be purchase invoice approved. Once the purchase invoice is approved for payment, it goes onto the payment proposal, and finally paid. The supplier can be paid. So today we're focusing in on the Dynamics prepayment area. So what happens when the supplier requires payment before shipping the goods? So I'm going to put on a request, I'm going to send it for approval, and it's going to become a purchase order. Those three simple steps get us to purchase order. Once we've got a purchase order, we'll be going into Dynamics, and we'll be able to enter the prepayment details, how much we want to prepay on that purchase order, and we're going to process that prepayment. So once the supplier has had the payment, we'll then be able to go through and do a goods receipt processing, enter the invoice, because the supplier will send us an invoice eventually, and then we can check back in eRequest to see how that looks. So let's go into the product and have a look at how that works. So I'm in the login screen here in my browser, and I can log in as Angela into my Nolan Business Solutions company. So I can see from Angela's front screen that she's got two requests to action here, two requests that have been rejected that Angela needs to sort out. We've got a number of requests as well that she's waiting for others to approve. And down at the bottom, we've got requests from the last 90 days. So it's a quick reference here. Angela can have a look at requests that she's put on in the last 90 days. And if some of these requests she wants to duplicate and send another request for the same goods, it's really easy just to go through, duplicate that request, and without having to put all the details in again. So the scenario that we're going to work through is that Angela has to put on a request where she's importing some goods, some food goods for distribution. Those goods are going to be imported, so the supplier that we're using requires a prepayment on that purchase order. So Angela can go into new request, and we can see that from her request forms we have a new request form here called imports. So I'll select that, So it's given us a request number 60 raised today, and the delivery address is going to go to our office over in Luanda. So what does Angela want? So if I go and add a line, we can specify the item that we will look to purchase. We'll say it's the Thai rice that Angela's looking to purchase here. The supplier that we use for Thai rice is WE Market, it's an offshore company, and the account that we're going to use here is 0001305. So that's our stock. Now that stock account has been defaulted automatically from the item number, so we know what general ledger account it needs to post to. We could always hide that off the form if we needed to. So we're going to purchase 200 cases, and those cases are going to be £12 each. There's no VAT on this particular purchase as it's food and it's overseas. We're going to require these by the 27th of July. Okay, so Angela can save that order and she can submit that order. In this case, I'm going to select myself, so she'll submit it to me for approval. The request comes back telling Angela her request has been submitted for approval, and I'll receive an email telling me that there's this request on the system awaiting my approval. I'm just going to log out and log back in as myself, where I see request 60 in my request to action. There's my email coming in here. So I can go into that request and I can look at it. It's the Thai rice, quantity of 200, unit price of 12, so it's £2,400 is the price of this rice. I can look in more detail, but if I'm just happy, I'm just going to approve that purchase order. And what it's doing at this point is it creates a purchase order inside Dynamics, and it's given me purchase order number 18. So that's step one done. Angela's put a request on, I've approved it, and we have a purchase order. We can send that purchase order to the supplier, clicking on the purchase order hyperlink, and we'll see here that it renders us a purchase order to WE Market for the rice. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is put on the prepayment. So I'm going to go into Dynamics, and I've set up a smart list of all my import purchase orders. You can see I've got 2 there that are closed. If I refresh this view, it shows me my purchase order number 18. It's been released. It's on the system for £2,400. Double click on that to open up the purchase order, and here's the purchase order on the system. It's the rice. We're getting it from WE Market. I can look into a bit more detail here. I can see the account number that's going to be posted to. I can see the required by date. I can see that it's been requested by Angela Barnes here. So there's a field inside Dynamics here of the prepayment. So I can choose inside here how much I want to prepay. So if the supplier is asked for a full prepayment of this, I can put in the full £2,400, and I can go into the expansion button here and I can choose whether the payment type is a computer check or a manual payment. If I've made a manual payment to that supplier, I can click on manual payment and enter the details of the account that I've made that payment from. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to click on computer check, and I'll just go through the process of raising a BACS payment to that supplier. So I'll save that purchase order here with the prepayment. Okay, so inside Dynamics now, I can go into Edit Prepayment Batch, and I'm going to create myself a batch called Prepay, add it, and there's a checkbox here to say Purchasing Prepayment Batch. So it's Purchasing Prepayment Batch. I'm going to pay it using electronic funds transfer out of my HSBC current account. So I've set up my prepayment batch, and we'll see that that payment that's been the prepayment that's required pops up on the screen. So I can tick that and say, yep, I'm going to prepay that payment in this payment run. I can go to the process button, and inside the process button it's going to give me EFT 003, print out the remittance, etc. So here we go. I can press on the process button, print out the remittance form. So I'll just process that. So here's the remittance form advising WE Market that we've got a payment coming to them for £2,400. If I had my email set up, I could email that remittance off to the supplier, and now I can post that prepayment. So I'll process that. Okay, so there's my posting coming out of the bank and going into my purchase prepayments account. And using Nolan Business Solutions electronic payments module, we can create an output file to be able to send that in whatever format we need, whichever banking system you're using. So the prepayment is now processed through the system. Once the supplier has the prepayment, then they're going to release the goods. And here what we can do is we can go in and put on a receiving transaction entry. And this enables us to enter the details of the shipment. So there might be a goods receipt number 1100. It's going to be in a batch, CS receipts. And our supplier is WE Market. I can click on the auto receive button to say yes, that's the purchase order I've received, and I have received 200 cases of that rice. So I'm just going to, actually I don't need a batch, I can just post that receipt onto the system. So what that has done is it's updated my stock of rice because I've received it, and now when the invoice comes in, I can match the invoice to that receiving document. So we'll have invoice 1100 from WE Market. Press the auto invoice button and I can see, yep, that's my purchase order where I've already received. I've ordered 200. 200 has already been shipped, so now I want to invoice, put on an invoice with those 200. What we can see in this window is that the subtotal of the invoice is 2,400. We have made already a prepayment of 2,400, so the total to pay on this particular invoice is 0. Distributions are going to reverse our accrual account and also reverse that prepayment account. So once I post that particular invoice, actually just before I do, let me show you what I can do with the new attach functionality here. If I click on the attach button, batch CS 1907, go into the attach button, I have an area here where I can drag and drop invoices. So if I go into my incoming invoices folder, if I've got the invoice coming in via email, I can go into my incoming invoices and I can drag that invoice into Dynamics, where it's now attached to the invoice, and I can preview that invoice. I can also see that inside eRequest. So I'll save that invoice. So what do I see now inside eRequest? If I go back into eRequest, log in as Angela, I can go to the purchase order inquiry, take a look at purchase order number 18. That's the purchase order we raised. I can go into the request that spawned that. I can have a look at the request. I can go into the request lines and I can see here that it's been receipted and it's been invoiced. And I can drill down into that invoice number and see at the moment that it's unpaid. Once I post that invoice, what the system's going to do is it's going to apply my prepayment to that invoice. So I'll just go into the invoice here and post it. There it is, posted. So when I go back into eRequest and refresh the screen, I can see now it's fully paid. So a very quick walkthrough of how through eRequest we can raise a request, we can get it approved, becomes a purchase order. Inside Dynamics we can then process a prepayment to our supplier, which then allows the supplier to release the goods to us, which can match up against the invoice and see all those transactions in eRequest. Thanks for your time this afternoon, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to come back to Nolan Business Solutions, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have on this.